Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. My name is Gene Joke and today I'm continuing my speculation, following on from the idea that Star Wars could possibly maybe come to Evercade. Well, to get Star Wars it requires Disney signing on. And of course Disney own lots of other things, whether it's Marvel, Aliens, Predator, all their own things, from the movies and series, there's a whole host of things under the Disney banner. But today I'm going to focus on Aliens and Predator, and of course Aliens versus Predator. Over the years there's been a whole bunch of games based on both franchises. I think there's been more Alien and Aliens related games, but there's still been a few Predator ones. Now most of the Predator games are really post what the Evercade can run, on PlayStation 2 and onwards. But there was a home micro Predator game that was released on the Commodore 64, the Atari ST, Spectrum, the Amiga, I believe it's even on the NES. So, that might be doable. And of course there was also a Predator 2 home micro game, which is on some of the same systems. And then there was a console one as well, which is an entirely different game, which I think was on NES, it was on Mega Drive. So that's pretty much it for the Predator franchise, I believe. Now, of course, you have got the Aliens versus Predator franchise. Of course, you have the Atari Jaguar game. Well, Jaguar emulation isn't up to snuff. It's a game I would love to see on Evercade. I was a big fan of that game back in the day. It was probably my favourite game on the Jaguar. But like I said, the emulation's not up to snuff, and I don't think the Evercade could run it anyway, so unfortunately that's going to be a no-go. There was the Aliens vs Predator arcade game by Capcom, and I believe that was ported to the Super Nintendo. That's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, so again, that could well be viable. I played the arcade version, that was quite good fun. I'm not sure about the Super Nintendo one. Was it any good? Not a clue, but I'll see if I can find some footage or maybe play it to have it on screen right now, because I'm recording this audio and then I'm going to add some video afterwards. Okay, so there was a Game Boy Aliens vs Predator game, Aliens vs Predator Last of His Clan. Again, not sure if it was any good, and I'll try and find some info on it. Anyway, that's the majority of my cursory glance at the Predator and the Aliens vs Predator games, because really the Aliens the main thing that I want to cover, and that just seemed to fit in, so got out of the way first. And again, like I said, limited options there available. Realistically, you'd be looking at a console collection. While there are home computer games, there's not a huge amount, but I will cover a potential home computer collection afterwards. But first of all, let's go for a red card and start off with Alien for 2600. Now this is a very Pac-Man looking type game. I've never played it. I think it's supposed to be, passable at best, but again, it'd be a novelty and interesting addition. As far as I'm aware, there wasn't really any Aliens games developed, in the early 90s or even late 80s that made it to consoles. There were home micro games, but again, I'll cover those later. Alien 3, on the other hand, is a different matter entirely. The one I'm most familiar with is the Mega Drive version. I was a big fan of this game back in the day. Developed by Probe Software, it's released on the Mega Drive, I think on the Amiga, Game Gear and Master System, maybe even an NES port if I recall correctly, not sure. Anyway, it was a good run and gun game where you run around the levels, shooting aliens, rescuing the prisoners who have been slimed up to the walls, and you go through the levels. Some good music, some good action. It could be quite tense, although difficulty could be quite high with some of the time limits on levels. It wasn't an amazing game, like a 7 out of 10 thing, but I always enjoyed it. But again, like I said, I was a huge fan of the franchise. It was also released on the Super Nintendo. However, that was essentially a completely different game. Now, I've not played that version much. I've had a brief go on it, but not to any great extent. I would like to play again at some point, so it would be a good opportunity if this was to ever happen, which it probably won't. Two solid games there. Okay, so having looked into it a bit more, so it seems the Aliens vs Predator game for the Super Nintendo, although released around the same time as the Capcom arcade game, was an entirely different game. I understand it's not necessarily considered a classic, but again, it could be a good addition to the collection. And really after that, the next game of note, I think the most likely candidate, would be Alien Trilogy, which was released on the Saturn and the PlayStation. Naturally, it would be the PlayStation version which would come to Evercade. Now, I remember playing this back in the day, and I didn't get on with it too well. I never played it that much, I never owned a copy, I only played it around the late, and didn't do very well, so maybe with a bit of perseverance I'd actually enjoy it a lot more. I know it definitely has its fans, and yeah, it's something I would love to see on a collection, and covering the whole trilogy in some shape or form, based on the title, I don't know, and it would be an ideal inclusion. And of course, following that you have Alien Resurrection for the PlayStation, which was kind of notorious for its control system, which was, called terrible at the time and pretty much became the default control system. At least that's the story you hear online, so I assume it's true. I don't think I ever played this game, so yeah, would love to see it, and to be fair, it's probably better than the movie was. And there's also a game that I've never heard of before looking into this video, and that is Aliens Thanos Encounter for the Game Boy Color. It looks like a top-down action game, a little bit like your Alien Breeds, so yeah, that could go down quite well. Looking at it, I gather the critical reception isn't amazing, but again, it would be an interesting inclusion. So that's largely it for console games on viable systems. There is one, however, which I would absolutely love to see, but I don't think it would be very possible, or will require a fair amount of work to get working, and that's Aliens Infestation for the Nintendo DS. Developed by Way Forward, and they've done a number of decent games. I've played this one a little bit. I didn't have a DS at the time, so I played on someone else's, but it impressed me, and I've kept meaning to kind of go back and play it. The problem would be the dual screen and the touch screen. It is featured into the gameplay. Potentially, maybe the Evercade could run it, I'm not sure. But again, it would require work to make it all function effectively. So I don't see it as being very likely, but yeah, I think it would be a really neat addition. So I did gloss over the whole concept of an arcade cart, and there has been a number of arcade games over the years. You had the Konami Aliens game, the Capcom Aliens vs Predator, you had the various Sega games, Arcadian 3D Gun, and I'm sure there's some others, so you may see some footage of various other arcade games pop up here. I don't know if they'd be viable or worth putting in, but again, maybe. Anyway, a home computer collection, which I think could also be quite interesting. So let's get into that now. So there was an Alien game released for the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC, but developed by Amsoft. I don't know much about it, but I'll put some footage up here if I can find it. And then there was Aliens computer game for the Commodore 64, the Amstrad and the ZX Spectrum. And I played this, I thought it was a really effective game. How well it would carry over to the Evercade and that, I'm not sure, but yeah, for my nostalgia, I think it'd be quite good. And there was an American version, or Aliens, the US version, all the same sort of systems. Never played that one. Again, I think it'd be a good bit of discovery for some people, and maybe the European one, which I played, would be interesting for people over on the other side of the Atlantic. And then there's an Aliens game for the MSX, or called Aliens Alien 2, which I don't know much about. Again, I'll try and find some footage. Could be an interesting addition. So again, that's the last of the obvious ones for home micros. But if lots was to happen, there is an Aliens comic book adventure, and maybe even the earlier Aliens vs Predator games. I mean, they might be able to run, that's a guess, maybe, don't know. However, they could take a bit of a tangent if they go into the unlicensed side of things. On the ZX Spectrum, there is Aliens Neoplasma and Aliens Neoplasma 2. Both which are well regarded unofficial Aliens games that have been released in the last 5 years or so. I've played a little bit of the first one and I was really impressed with it. Again, I think it would make a great addition. Whether that would be viable with licensing and everything, I have no idea. But again, could be a really interesting inclusion. So if the whole licensing thing could be wrangled, which again, like I said, could be tricky, not only just for Disney, but the developers or publishers of some of these games could just add to the the headaches of licensing. Anyway, I don't see it as a likely possibility, but something I personally would love to see. I've probably missed games out, I've just a comprehensive list. I thought it was just an interesting, bit of wishful thinking. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, and maybe I'll do some more videos like this, I'm not sure. I've got more reviews and ranking videos coming up, and they're uploaded currently towards the back end of November. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this video, so take it easy, and I'll see you on the next one.